Shadowverse Worlds Beyond first expansion will be releasing in 2 days on July 17th, and I've got the remainder of the legendary and gold cards we have yet to review here today. If you missed any of my previous roundups of all the sweet cards that are going to be in this set, be sure to check the links in the video description down below. For the rest of the day, let's get into these latest ones. We kick things off with an incredibly strong Portalcraft legendary Karula Mind's Art with the fanfare effect. Select an artifact in your hand that costs 5 or less and summon an exact copy of it. 6 play points, 5/4 on the stat line. This type of effect is exactly what the Portalcraft artifacts deck is typically looking for in the mid game. In the existing deck list, you are copies of Rite to get your artifacts into play without expending them as resources are some of your best draws, and this gives you a more consistent way to do that that doesn't require your evolutions. It's also a card that in a pinch with a super evolution can help you stabilize the board. Gaining can attack twice when you do that means you can crack for 8 damage against 2 different things and push a little bit of additional damage to your opponent's face with that super evolution. Whenever you destroy something, you deal 1. Well, I'm confident that Portalcraft artifacts are absolutely going to want many copies of this card. The big question will be what gets cut in order to fit it in. Likely the Doomrite spell goes down to just a 1-of, as this is a more efficient way to give you permanent copies of your artifacts in play until your opponent deals with them, but it could be copies of Sylvie or maybe even Orcus that shed way at the top end of your curve to fit in more potent 6-drops like this one. As someone who's played what could probably be described as an unreasonable amount of Earthright Runecraft in our first set, I am super excited about Norman, our other Runecraft legendary in this expansion. 6 play point, 5/5, who on Fanfare has an Earthright 1 that is modal. You either get a Guardian Golem, which is a 3/3 with Ward, and give it Barrier. You draw 3 cards, or you restore 4 defense to your leader. And when you evolve this, you get to replicate its fanfare ability, meaning that if you have another Earthright point lying around, you get to pick from those 3 modes a second time. This type of flexible modal card that can help you stabilize the board with Ward, it can heal you, it can draw you cards in the control matchups, and then it can do it all again if you spend one of your evolution points on it, is exactly the type of flexible top end that I think the Earthright deck has been missing. It's going to be interesting to see, to me, whether or not you play this in addition to the other objectively powerful cards in Runecraft like Anna and Gray and Kuan, or if perhaps this finally pushes some of those more spell boost focused cards out for a more dedicated Earthright deck to really shine in the metagame. Next up is our second Dragoncraft legendary of the expansion. We have the Radiant Phoenix here, an 8 play point 4/4, whose fanfare halves the cost of all cards still in your deck. This is one of those types of effects where this card feels like it's probably either busted or unplayable, and I'm not sure there's likely to be a lot of middle ground. This effect is incredibly powerful if you can play it out at a portion in the game where you can afford to just spend 8 play points on a 4/4. That being said, Shadowverse is a game that regularly demands that you're trading with and interacting with your opponent's board every single turn, especially in the mid to late game when you're going to have the resources to play an 8 play point card. So it feels to me like it's probably going to be a challenge in a lot of your games to play this effect out without getting completely run over on board the following turn. It's also important to acknowledge that it's not going to simply be enough to live a turn when you play this. You're going to need to live a handful of turns typically, so that way you can draw a bunch of these cheaper cards. Now, one thing that's worth calling out is if you can live to play this out on 8, you do still have the 9 play point Twilight Dragon or even a Burnite that could follow this up to stabilize the board cleanly. So if you get that window of breathing room, you can probably stabilize with the other tool the Dragoncraft deck has. Burnite's also a good call out with this card as well, because there's going to be games where you can't afford to play this and it's just an 8 play point card for Burnite to discard, letting you completely clear away your opponent's side of the board. Up next, we have a gold Abysscraft follower, the Nocturne General, a 4 play point 1/3 with Storm, whose Fanfare ability gives it plus X attack, where X is equal to the number of other allied followers on the field, and she does 2 damage to your leader. A lot of the Abysscraft cards we've seen in this expansion so far are very clearly designed to support the bigger, more controlling builds of Abysscraft, which is generally a good thing. I think that build needs a lot of support, but I'm honestly really excited about the Nocturne General because my favorite Abysscraft deck in our first set is actually the really low to the ground aggressive one, and this card seems like it could be quite a potent addition to that build. It's another storm threat, meaning you can spend your evolution points to push damage with it, and it has really good synergy with the cemetery amulet, which allows you to essentially hold 2 bodies back so you can crack that amulet, get those storm ghosts that are able to crack your opponent. They then count as bodies for the Nocturne General to get even bigger and allow you to push big bursts of damage in ways that your opponent's going to have a difficult time accounting for in the early to mid game. Up next, we have our first big pickup for the Runecraft Spell Boost deck, Owen the Mysterian Swordsman. 3 play point, 3/3 that has Ward, and then on Clash, meaning when it attacks into a follower, or a follower attacks into it, it spell boosts your hand. And then if you evolve it, you get to draw 2 followers out of your deck. I think this is pretty likely to be a staple inside of the Spell Boost deck. When I've played the archetype in the past, it definitely feels like one of the spots it's lacking is plays that it can drop proactively on the board early, and this absolutely loves doing that. Its evolve effect is nothing to scoff at either. I would wager you could probably construct your Spell Boost deck in a way where your copies of Owen as well as Kuan and Annie are among some of the only followers that you're playing in the deck, meaning when you evolve him, you'll be incredibly likely to draw some of your most powerful bombs that make your deck the most powerful, meaning that this stabilizes the board for you early and supercharges your mid to late game with an element of consistency that the deck hasn't had before. Rose Princess Knight is a 3 play point swordcraft follower that is a 3/2 with Rush, and on follower strike, if the opposing follower is damaged, destroy it. Follower strike happens before the cards exchange damage back and forth, meaning if she attacks into something that's damaged, it doesn't get to hit her back. She also has Enhance 5, draw a swordcraft follower that costs 2 or less, and set its cost to 0. Rose really feels like a bread and butter type card for the Swordcraft archetype. It's an effect that you're probably pretty happy to just play it out on 3 for reasonable stats that can also help you impact the board in a decent way. It also works really solidly in the mid to late game, generating you a little bit of card advantage by drawing a cheaper card out of your deck. And the follower strike means she can clean up anything large on the opponent's side of the board, so long as it's had a little bit of damage dealt to it. This works especially well in tandem with the fact that you often have a 1/1 or 2/2 officer lying around that get that first chip shot in, allowing Rose to come in and finish up whatever it started. Next up, we have another incredible pickup for Puppets Portal Craft, a 6 energy gold spell that summons both a Lloyd and a Victoria. Lloyd is that 1/6 puppet with ward that has to be targeted before any of your other units in the field can be targeted. And Victoria is the new 6/1 that on follower strike deals 6 damage to the opponent, meaning it clears anything with 6 life or less before it can hit back, and it can trade with something that has up to 12 points. Up next, we have a neutral gold follower, the Twin Gods, a 2 play point 2/2 that on Enhance 5 auto evolves up to a 4/4, and as the last words effect, if this follower was evolved, deal 4 damage to a random enemy follower. This card feels like it competes for a similar slot to the Lionheart Ward, an existing 2/2 gold neutral follower that we have. That one has the upside of destroying a thing that you select when you evolve it, but it doesn't have the bonus of evolving itself in the mid to late game with the enhance effect. This one will be a little bit less powerful in the early game and a little bit less controlled since it has to blow up to deal extra damage, but the fact that it doesn't burn your evolutions or require them to be useful in the mid to late game definitely has a little bit more staying power for it in a number of shells, I would wager. Up next is another neutral card, 7 play point 5/5. The United Angel says on evolve, evolve all unevolved allied followers you have on the field. This one feels like it's going to be tough to make work. My initial thought is perhaps it could work in the Abysscraft deck where you're evolving other skeletons or smaller buys that were left on the board that your opponent typically didn't care about. You could also do something with fairies maybe in the same vein, but my gut instinct is this 7 play points is such a huge cost for this type of effect that it's going to be hard to justify playing a card like this as opposed to other in-class cards that likely have more synergy and are more powerful in your deck. Very interesting gold Havencraft spell, Frenzied Devotion. For 2 play points, you restore 10 defense to your leader, but then on countdown 2, you take 10 damage back. This card is somewhat of a gambit, but it could be really useful inside of the Havencraft Storm deck in particular. You won't want to play this obviously in a deck where you're trying to play a long controlling game, but the Storm deck can often end up in positions where it just needs a turn or two to deal that finishing blow, and Frenzied Devotion could buy you the key time that you need for your Storm amulets to come off of working and then drop another bomb and smash your opponent for a big burst of damage before you get killed by your own card. Speaking of those more controlling Abysscraft decks that we mentioned earlier, we have a new silver card, the Rotting Zombie, that could perhaps slot into those. This is a 6 play point 3/3 that summons 2 Rotting Zombies on Fanfare, which are a 3 play point 2/2. And the Rotting Zombie has a last word ability where it summons a copy of itself without the last word effect when it dies. Now, the big downside slash thing you'll need to work around with this card is it doesn't allow you to impact the board the turn it comes down unless you're burning an evolution to allow it to attack right away, but it leaves a ton of points behind that your opponent has to deal with, meaning if their current board can't kill you, you're going to have a ton of stats that allow you to be aggressive on the backswing. They have to get through a 3/3, 2/2/2s, and then 2 more 2/2s in order to clear you out. It's a card that seems especially good against more grindy builds that are going to be sweeping your board all at once, since you'll have 2 Rotting Zombies left behind even if they do that. Speaking of getting your board swept, that brings us to our last card today, a silver spell for the Runecraft Spell Boost deck, the Chaos Flame. It has an X that starts at 0, and every time you spell boost, it gets increased by 1, and then it deals X split damage between all enemy followers. Key mechanical thing to note about split damage in Shadowverse Worlds Beyond, for those not familiar, is that it always starts with your opponent's rightmost card and then deals damage equal to that card's total defense, and then it spreads to the left as it does that, meaning it doesn't randomly distribute it, and you're guaranteed to kill things until you get to the very last one where the overkill finally gets applied if you have extra damage. This seems like an effect that the Spell Boost deck is going to absolutely love. While it's not stellar in the early game, in the mid to late game, it's going to be an incredibly play point efficient way for you to absolutely massacre your opponent's board in a big way if you had this drawn early on. I gotta say, I'm super excited to dig in with a bunch of these cards on Thursday when they drop. If you want to see me open a bunch of packs and brewing and playing with a bunch of different things, I'm going to be streaming Shadowverse all day here on this YouTube channel, as well as my twitch.tv channel /Jeff Hoagland, checking out lots of different things. I think the things I'm most excited to play with are definitely the new Rite top ends, as well as the potential for a non-roach Forestcraft deck focused more on the fairies. I would love to hear in the comments down below what you're looking forward to building with and what I should consider poking at past that as well. If you happen to be new to the channel, you enjoyed my breakdown and roundup of all the spoilers, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the sweet deck lists, tier lists, and other things that we're going to be doing with the set after it drops. If you like today's video in particular, make sure you smash the like button as well. I appreciate everybody that made it all the way through to the end of the video, and I hope your packs with the new expansion are excellent.